Portugal's Chega is the latest far-right party to see its star rise at the polls, winning the third most seats in parliament just 5 years after its inception. And according to some observers, the shift towards the right in Europe is unlikely to slow down. The European Council on Foreign Relations think tank predicts that the European Parliament election set for June will, quote, see a major shift to the right in many countries, with populist radical right parties gaining votes and seats across the EU. So to help put into perspective the growing influence of right-wing politics across Europe, we're joined this morning by Kurt Hubner, the Jean Monnet Chair for European Integration and Global Political Economy and Professor of Political Science at the University of British Columbia. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning.
So in addition to Chega's performance in Portugal over the past 5 years or so, we've also seen parties touting far-right ideologies gain seats in Italy, France, the Netherlands, and Finland. That's just to name a few. What are some of the reasons we might be seeing behind these kinds of ideas gaining traction in Europe?
Yeah, there's rightly mentioned, there's this rise of right-wing populist parties across Western Europe and also Southern Europe, as you mentioned now in Portugal. And even though there may be specific reasons for each country, there are kind of commonalities. And one commonality definitely has to do with the migration processes in Europe. The number of people are coming. There's a very strong anti-migration sentiment that is really fed into political processes by those right-wing populist parties, even though then there are differences. For example, Geert Wilders in the Netherlands, who was just also came out of the election as the strongest party, he's a very strong kind of anti-Muslim sentiment, whereas, let us say, the AfD, the Alternative for Germany, is generally spoken against any kind of migration. So, but this has become a kind of driving force across all those parties, despite all other differences.
Some 450 million people are going to cast votes in June to elect members of the European Parliament. So what do you expect to see in terms of the turnout for the populist right?
Yeah, generally spoken, turnout at European Parliament elections is a bit lower than on a national level. And this will lead probably to a situation where the established parties may not be able to mobilize their regular kind of base, whereas the fringe parties, the right-wing populist parties, they will have a much stronger turnout of their base. And this, according to all kinds of predictions across all countries, will definitely lead to an increase in the number of seats in the European Parliament. And given the fact that the European Parliament is a kind of, it's called co-legislator, a very critical institution within the European Union, this is shifting the power relations within the Parliament. It will make life for established parties much more difficult.
What could this ideological shift potentially mean in terms of broader policy direction right across Europe?
Yeah, I would think so. There are a couple of elements. One, as I mentioned, definitely migration policies. We can see the EU is their migration regime is not working. They are taking up some of those ideas from right-wing populist parties. They are doing all kind of bilateral agreements with Egypt, with Tunisia, with kind of dictatorships. And this is not a good kind of a process, but gives you an idea of the influence of those right-wing populist parties. Another element definitely has to do with climate policies. Right-wing populist parties are not in favor of climate policies. And now in a situation of a cost of living crisis, they will use any opportunity really to disengage and to put their votes in favor of policies that have nothing to do with climate. And the third element is, this is also commonality of those right-wing populist parties. They're all anti-globalization, means making trade agreements with other parts of the world. All this will become much more difficult for the EU and the European Council, given the kind of, or assuming the shift in power within the European Parliament.
It's been interesting to look at the factors behind this shift to the strong right. Kurt, thanks for this today.
Thanks so much.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.